Not this one yet. Well, children and the children's topic. My understanding is there's two kind of general direction topics. One of them is parenting, handling that transition stage of life from not having to having children, and merging that or combining that with early stages of sadhana bhakti and how to stay on track, making adjustments for things that come along in life. That's not exactly what I was asked, but something like that. Something like that. There's a few thoughts on the parenting topic specifically. One of those topics is one of the suggestions. There's two personalities who are particularly gifted in guiding others in the parenting territory. One is Nityananda Pran, and another is a Mataji from Dallas, Texas. Gita Govinda is her name, and she's written a book, and she is making that book available for free online, a PDF. And the title of the book is Leadership Parenting. You know about it? I sent it to your wife. Leadership Parenting, Gita Govinda. And you connect with her at her website, and she'll just immediately send you a PDF of her book, free. And she gives, from time to time, gives seminars on the topics in the book. Her background: she was born in a devotee family, became married, now has teenage boys, and she has a degree in this and that and the other thing. And she's a teacher, an elementary school teacher at their TKG Academy in Dallas, in ISKCON place. And she does networking with other religious groups and how they do what they do. In other words, her principles are universal. Her book has, with the way she described it, it has, at the end of each section, there's affirmations that are basically mantras. She does her teaching, it's explicit Bhagavad Gita teaching that way. But the book is for people and parents, people with desires to help their children grow. So I saw the video. See if your wife has a copy of that video. It was a podcast that Kastuba and Raghunath do, Monk's podcast or something like that. Anyway, she's good. Her book is good, and she does consultation if that's needed. From what I've understood, her consultation can be expensive, but she has workshops that are not as expensive, and people that have worked with her or have read her book and have worked with her, they're good. I mean, there's other resources that aren't like these two individuals are professionally trained to train in parenting. There's certainly very capable parents that know how to give advice. So that's some resources. Principles. I can speak about principles because I don't have children, at least my own children, other children. Something that I've seen, I've heard, and I've seen. So principles that are enduring is find time. In busy lives, we're busy. However, parenting does require some very focused time with children, so the children have a sense of connection, and then in that connection, a sense of values, and then values that um, a young person they're very comfortable to live by, knowing that at a certain point in time they're going to take a look at those values and decide whether they want to continue with those values or change them out and put other ones in. Because it happens. I just had a young girl, not young girl, he's a college graduate, but I've known her since she was little like these kids here. And she expressed something that I found to be really nice. She said, I don't want to leave the deities. I have friends. She was with her older sister. I have friends. They also, like me, they grew up in devotee families, and they're kind of drifting, and they don't seem to really mind drifting. And I don't want to do that. So that's a value that she has, that she's decided, at a certain stage of life. She did homeschooling. And when she went to college, it was her first experience of being with people that, there's all kinds of kids her age that do all kinds of different things than what she learned when she was doing homeschooling at home. Excellent student. But she has a compass that points to where she wants to go, not just in terms of career and academic and all those things that our young people value very much. She has those. So parenting is, little by little by little, through the strength of the relationship with your children, that they get a sense of not just, right and wrong, but, a higher purpose of life. A topic came up the other day. Sri Radhika would probably remember the context of how the topic came up. But a parent naturally has to look after the physical and the emotional needs of their dependents. That's an obvious service. However, the greater service is being the spiritual guide. And being the spiritual guide in such a way it's palatable. It's attractive. Because even at earlier stages, some children are more inclined like this, some are more inclined like that, some are more inclined like another, in terms of spiritual orientation. And good parenting is to recognize, nurture that particular kind of interest, and make that particular kind of interest, or guide that particular kind of interest in the direction of something that can be done in relation to Krishna. So doing things together as a family, or doing things together as the parent to the child, just one on one, or a combination. So that there's a sense of identity. It, it's easier said than done because we have busy lives. But here's a nice little example. Um, one of our excellent um, Brahminical ladies in the Hare Krishna movement, her name is Urmila, Prabhupada disciple, and uh, she has a PhD in education. She ran a Gurukul for many years, and has been very, very, very involved in education in a across the board. She shared something that I didn't know. She didn't say her father's name, but I know her father's name. She was from a mega wealthy family, Jewish family, and her father. She said this at our. You remember if she heard it at the event that we had in Potomac, Maryland over the Memorial Day weekend. She was in the audience, and I asked her to come to take part in the question and answer. She said her father was the chairman of an international company, and he was the CEO of this and that and the other thing. He had a very, very active, very busy, very responsible life, very capable person. And every day for 2 hours, as busy as he was, it was just time for both him and his daughter. And I know I didn't know that till she said it. But that means, she felt very secure. No, her father wasn't a spiritualist. Her father was, a businessman, but very caring father. So the bond between father-daughter must have been pretty significant. So in the course of she didn't describe what they did together, but it made an impression for me. It's as busy as he was, and we can be really, really busy. Um, as a father, he doesn't say for how many years, but during a certain part of her formative years at least, very substantial input of time. And this isn't a Hare Krishna parent. This is a Jewish father and his daughter and his world of business. By spending that kind of time, then it becomes easier to understand the nature of because each like your two children, they're so different. Gosh. So each child is different, and so according to their need, their personality, interest, and things, then time spent together and providing resources that match that interest and so forth and so on. So I'll say it again more succinctly. In addition to the emotional needs and the physical needs of your dependents, the nurturing the spiritual inclination, because born in a family that's spiritually inclined means in their previous lives that's what they were doing. And then this is an opportunity as parents to help them go further, if not complete that cycle beyond birth and death. So nurturing whatever that is, that spark, that interest, and the application of that interest, and an obvious one. It's worth saying it, even if it's obvious. Don't push, but invite and encourage. And it's knowing that whatever spirituality or bhakti is imparted is a permanent asset. Whatever else happens in their later life, it's a permanent asset. So this is a transition from wherever they were in their previous lives to whatever they're going to be later in this life, in that for that period of time of parenting to help that trajectory go further on a relational basis, a caring basis. Having, in addition to time of caring, the example setting, so that because children will see, and the tendency of what they see, is to imitate. Like deity worship, I've seen where the parents have deity worship and the children want to participate just because the parents are participating. And at a certain point in time, they may ask, or it may just be, what would you like to have your own little altar? And so just give them, depending upon their interest, but setting an example of kirtan, setting an example of studying, of discussing, of reading together, and asking, engaging in Krishna Katha, Hari Katha, as adults, then with your children. But just seeing that example helps to awaken by following the example. It's just like a brahmana will do certain XYZ things, and it's natural that their son, daughter will see the XYZ things, and they'll want to do XYZ things naturally. So without forcing it or pushing it, set an example. Then comes this other topic that fits into this other topic, which is how to go forward through periods of your life, your adult life. Now, most of you here have children, where it's a whole new ball game, and the responsibility of parenting is really big, and the qualification to do it nicely is not so big. So it's a little bit like anything that one does in devotional life. Supposing someone goes to distribute books, you realize, gosh, I need some spiritual potency. And so you take your sadhana more seriously, because it's the strength of that spiritual potency that's going to have some effect. Don't distribute books and you won't have that realization. You won't have that impetus. Or somebody was asking me about giving class. And I said, if you give a class, you'll feel far, far, far more compelled to not only read Prabhupada's book, but to read carefully and try to understand so you can present. If you don't present, if you're just attending a class, you may not study or read or hear with the same kind of attentiveness. So, related to the parenting topic is your own spiritual practices. You have to have some qualification to give to your dependents what your dependents deserve because they're taking birth in an elevated family. So I can't give to them something I don't have. I have to have I have to have something. You can't give what you don't have. So then nurturing your own spiritual practice along with a busy life, etc., etc., etc. So in a short phrase, something that I very much like, repeat since I heard it, is a saying from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Real simple. Progress is a series of small steps in the right direction. That's it. It's incrementalism. Progress is a series of small steps in the right direction. It's important to know what the right direction is. And it's also important to know what sustainable small steps. Let's say it the other way. Supposing somebody tries, it's the Sanskrit phrase is utsahamai, with utsaha, with enthusiasm, it's not sustainable. So one may try to do something that's not sustainable, and then there's stages after that and stages after that. It's good to have an idea of what's goal. Prabhupada's statement, similar. Once the goal is well defined, it's easy to take steps to reach the goal. Conversely, if the goal is not well defined, good luck to make steps to reach the goal. When I was in college, I had a friend who had a little sports car, a convertible sports car. It was like that was not very common those days. A little convertible sports car, and every Saturday he went for a ride. For a few hours. And I asked him, "Where do you go?" He said, "I'm just going for a drive." And my response was, "I hope you get there." Developing a sense of clarity helps. Goals are powerful. This is something some of you may know who Vaisheshika Prabhu is. He's a hero in the field of book distribution. He has a few little sutras. Goals are powerful. And it's true. As soon as you set a goal for yourself, in his is book distribution. So he has this plan of how many sets of books should the world, sets of Srimad Bhagavatam should be distributed this year, and then the next year, and then the next year, with increments of increase to reach a certain mark. And as soon as you don't just talk about it, but you establish, okay, let's just say, for myself, ourselves as a family, or our little community, or our temple, or whatever it is. This is it's a little bit of a stretch, but it's doable. As soon as you make that commitment, immediately the intelligence starts to go how to fulfill the commitment. If you don't make that commitment or don't have that goal, the intelligence isn't activated. So, the bigger picture of life, what's the goal of life? Or what's the goal of our family? Husband, wife, dependents. What's the goal? And if the clearer you are about the goal, it can have intermediate goals, but if the clearer you have about the goal, it's easier to set intermediate goals and even short-term goals. It moves, and that's the little steps in the right direction. And then the little steps should be ones that are sustainable. I mean, something that most likely everyone has been through already is this, how many rounds should I chant every day? And it may start with whatever it starts with, one or two, and it goes to four, and then it goes, whatever it is. So it should be some steps that are sustainable, and then you sustain. And you sustain because you made a personal commitment to whatever that number was. And then, in a broader sense, life is like that. What's a goal, a worthy goal for me or for us as a family or for something that's doable, whatever that is. I mean, from time to time, people express every day. Someone was sharing this with me. Every day before, this is somebody in China. Every day before I begin my workday, I read 3 verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 2 verses from Bhagavad Gita, and I say certain prayers every day. And every day and every day, and they've been doing it for years because they set a goal and it's doable. And if there's now they're in, canto something or other in Srimad Bhagavatam, and they haven't completed the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, but they're consistent. It's a sustainable step in the direction of where you want to go. To do with others, in the association of others, that helps. So you can have your little japa group or reading group. That's very common. There she goes. Or, I don't blame him. She's okay. This little one. You want to stay? Okay. So those are just some little, it's incrementalism. Progress, here's the saying, progress is a series of small steps in the right direction. He expands that concept, Bhaktivinoda Thakur expands that concept by explaining yoga ladder. And when one can be identified as a bhakti yogi, even if one is whatever the stage, because they're progressive towards the goal. But if one becomes stagnant at a certain position and doesn't progress towards the goal, then one may be identified as a karma yogi or gyan yogi or a something yogi or a something without progressing. So there may be some greater inclination or emphasis at a given stage, but if the goal is clear, then you continue to progress in sustainable steps, and that's how it happens. But you have to be ready to, move to the next step after stabilizing yourself at a particular step, and do it steadily, like this devotee that wrote me from China. 3 verses of Bhagavatam, 2 verses from Bhagavad Gita, and a certain set of prayers every day for like 3-4 years, every day. And they live in a place where they don't have any association other than what they create through their own preaching in China. But they're receiving strength. And, so then there's a commitment they feel to their spiritual master. I'm doing this, because I know it'll keep me strong. I've heard and I've understood, and I'm applying, and the strength of that relationship helps a lot, helps a lot. Okay, so let's see. I thought what I discussed with Yasoda Nandana, you probably want to spend more time discussing than me talking, just in time for the kids to come back again, right? So, any questions or comments or thoughts on this or whatever you want to bring up?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So, about the kids in parenting section that we discussed is one thing as both of us parents we are struggling with the kids is chanting. I mean, making not pushing her to chant, but what is the right way for her to approach in chanting, or for us to give a direction in chanting? One thing I can think of is being an example, like
Yeah,
don't.
that's the starting point.
Okay.
And then, different, each person, each child is different. So, recognizing their personality, what to do, what not to do, depends a lot on their personality. So, what is something that might help? Doing something that they like, and then doing this something they like, and connect that with with some chanting together. Trying different channels depending upon the nature, the character, personality. And thinking the pause there was just children commonly like kirtan. So if that's the case, then kirtan in such a way that the encouragement, not just in the musicality of the kirtan, but encouragement in the sound of the name, in addition to the musicality, because that's largely the attraction. And see if that connection can be made, and if that connection can be made, then it might make it easier for the japa connection, because it's meditation on sound. If kirtan is that kind of meditation, not just the music. Ideal also is, if there is such a thing, is available, is association with others that have some liking, some attraction for chanting japa, being with others that are more their age, that have some liking, helps. Anything else?
Hare Krishna. My question is around, on the parenting aspect, just the encouragement of different inclinations in the realm of devotional service. Yeah. And so, like as parents, we have our own inclinations or inspirations,
Naturally.
and those may not necessarily align to what our children may naturally be inclined to.
Right.
And so, does that mean, as parents with, I guess, the greater faculty of reasoning, kind of put our inclinations aside in favor of supporting the children's inclinations? Because they're not always compatible, is what or overlapping, I should say.
My response is it depends on the relationship. Meaning, having a child, having anyone, not just a child, recognizing that someone is appreciating and fostering, nurturing that which they're interested in. And in a loving relationship, it's also for the child to see my parent, my mother, father, they have this inclination. How nice. It may not be the same as theirs. So if that loving appreciation for one another is what grows over time, then being yourself and feeling energized and alive, being yourself according to your interests, whatever that may be, whether it matches theirs or not. And it can be implicit or explicit or both. So that the child can learn, or that not just child, another person can learn how to appreciate seeing another person happy, doing what is natural for them, feeling good about it. Although it's not what I'm, my particular interest or enthusiasm point. If that can be communicated, that's ideal. So that there's some of both. And when you're doing what enlivens you, they're looking and saying, fantastic. And when you're looking and participating or whatever, it's saying fantastic. It's different, but it's fantastic. That's a loving exchange. So I wouldn't say just push your interest to the side, but make that part of the dynamic of the relationship. That they know this is enlivening. You're doing that which is enlivening. Whatever that is. Another one?
Yes, Maharaj. This was more on the progress as a series of small steps in the right direction. And if you could just give some description around a general guideline of understanding that those small steps are in the right direction. And I want to qualify that with, there's a generic sense of hearing, chanting, service, but kind of reconciling that with the sustainable element that you were bringing up also in your talk, and just understanding that that small step.
An itemized set of options in terms of, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Understanding that the small steps are in the right direction and appropriate for our level of maturity.
Yeah. So if you have that, the short answer is, with that sincerity, that you invest in that, and Krishna will give the intelligence. What are the steps that are appropriate for me, and what might be beyond my capacity to sustain. And then there's continual refinement. That's part of what intelligence is. It keeps refining and refining and refining. But that's the relationship with Krishna. When Krishna sees the sincere desire to reach him, then he'll give the intelligence, and what may work for you may not work for anybody else in the room. They're principles, but what may work, what it's going to look like, and it may be very different from another person. One of the rules of incrementalism is stay with it. You identify something that's incrementally doable and stay with it. And you stay with it, and you just like this letter from this devotee in China. There for 3 years. It is like there's a celebration. They for 3 years they've been doing the same consistent, doable thing without much external support, because they're often a place where there isn't other devotees. So you had little steps, then you celebrate, and then you consider what's next. So that's Super Soul will guide you. Those close to you can also suggest or encourage or support or something, like you probably do with your family or you do with your friends that you want to grow. They consult. What do you think? Is this? Yeah, that's you. Then you support. You receive and you give support to others, and refine it continuously, ready to and be perfectly prepared that it's going to take a while to have steps that are consistent over time. That is to say, unsteady bhakti precedes steady bhakti, and that's fine. That's how bhakti unfolds. It's unsteady before steady.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. This may not be related to parenting itself, but more about, as you were saying, defining a goal for yourself or defining or having a bigger picture. So, one of the challenges that I've had is when we say one of our goals is pleasing Krishna. How is it we can apply it in a day to day life and in every minute or every hour? Because when we chant, we can think of approaching Krishna, thinking about Krishna, or if you go to the temple or if you're in association. And how do we gauge, as you know, very similar to what Yashodanandan was asking, we are actually progressing in that path?
There's a verse, often quoted verse in the Bhagavatam, where it is said that in response to your question, there are certain symptoms by which one knows that we are heading in the right direction. Bhakti, Parishanubhavo, Viraktir Anyatra Cha. Those are the three. And is compared to a person that's been fasting for some time and their body has become weak and they break the fast. So their symptoms. Their hunger subsides. Their body regains strength. And at a certain point, they're satisfied. I don't need anything more. So as with the eating process, so also with the bhakti process. Bhakti means I have some enthusiasm to serve. Para, Isha, Anubhav. Then there's feelings. In any relation, there's feeling. So if there's not feelings, then there's something's not right. If there's some feelings, then there's detachment from other things. Viraktir anyatra cha. So eagerness to serve, some feelings towards the object of devotion, the object of love, the object of service, and detachment from other things. Now, there's a use of the intelligence that says, let me accept things favorable and let me reject things unfavorable. That's the intelligence operating. So that's the regulative part of bhakti. But as that regulative part of bhakti becomes matured, or we're going in the right direction, then very naturally one doesn't have an interest in certain things. And then as one is progressing, that interest in more of those types of things starts to grow. And so the singular focus on Krishna becomes stronger than the allure for other things. It works the other way around too. If one becomes slackened, then the attraction for other things starts to rise again. It's a very nice teaching Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives in relation to this topic. As one becomes more advanced, it doesn't take much of slackening, and then the mind is filled with other thoughts again. So that means for bhakti to become matured, it's the submission, the eagerness to reach Krishna is not intermittent. When it's intermittent, then it's the sine curve. And when it's matured, it stays. But it doesn't stay just because I'm a Stoic, and I'm very determined to be, a good devotee. But it's more on the spontaneous platform. If one has a desire to please Krishna, that's this Para Isha Anubhav. One has a desire to please Krishna, or please Guru and Krishna, then Krishna will give intelligence. Between what's right and wrong. That scripture is there to tell us right and wrong, but the inner direction from Super Soul will also be there. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. We are practicing bhakti by following this Krishna conscious principles, right? So this is on the lines of same Yashodanandan was asking, like once we have the goal is defined, right? It is easy to take the steps forward. So, and to define that goal also, we need to be having that sense of clarity in the mind, right? So when we are beginning, we may not know exactly like what would be our goals. So my question is, the acharyas knows, the maharajas knows. So can we get like what should be our goal? Yeah, so that we can make that progress towards that.
You're not going to get the goal any other way. It's not just in the mind, because the mind is very clever, tricky. The goal comes from, the goal is a transcendental goal, and to get a sense of transcendence, it comes in a descending fashion. not otherwise. And that which is in fact the goal is something that's intrinsic to the soul, but just covered. So then when it's not just in the mind, but it's on the soul platform, it's being, let's just say, keeping it the language simple, being in my relationship with Krishna. Now it's notional. Exactly what that means, what it feels like, what it looks like, it's foggy, not in focus, not really, really, really clear. But directionally, it resonates. And it's the alternative to not having such a goal, because not having such a goal means material life. And material life is not yummy. So I want to go in that direction. And then, so even to refine, to refocus, so it becomes really, really clear what the goal is, it's this same process, it's hearing from transcendental sources. And then serving those sources and the messages from those sources leads to cleansing. The fog gets dissipated by that process, and then the goal becomes more clearly defined. And my enthusiasm then at least has the opportunity to become more focused on what the goal actually is. Part of the problem, well, there's several problems. One of them is complacency. We just like to be comfortable, and once we're a little more comfortable, we're complacent. We slacken because I want to be comfortable. That's a problem. There's other ways of saying what the obstacles are. They're largely internal, and the receiving clarity on the sources from the goal is from the medium of sound, through sources that we trust, transcendental sources that we trust. And then it resonates, and then we try to do. And then we get distracted, and we hear again, we try to do. Yeah.
With, I guess with those of us that were raised a certain way and then adopted this process of bhakti yoga in life, is raising a child from the start of his or her life.
Yeah, big difference.
Yes, Marge. Because on the one hand, there's the perspective of giving that child the benefit of the lessons we learned through the School of Hard Knocks, so trying to raise them in a way that it's not necessarily that same experience, that same influence. But at the same time, I guess the part that I'm struggling with is imparting it in a way where it's a genuine acceptance from within, rather than my mom and dad have always told me this and have only exposed me to
Acceptance on their part, or acceptance on your part?
Their part. Because I guess
it's all about the relationship and the personality, and the relationship between you and them. If they feel that just they're being manipulated, or they're not being, anyway, if they have different persons are going to have different stuff back there before they got to become your dependent. So what's needed in order that it's a genuine relationship? And there may be obstacles from the parent's side, maybe obstacles from the child's side, maybe obstacles, a combination of obstacles, and then you got to work those things out. But the sincerity is the an essential part, and then sensitivity to the needs and the personality of the dependent. Allowing that their autobiography is different than yours. You just have to work with it. Krishna's given you whoever Krishna's given you to have as your children, and then you work with them. And so it's based on trust, love and trust.
I'm seeing that as kind of a default theme in the case of children, that it's all about investing in that relationship to establish that love
Yeah.
and trust and these things
And
naturally.
I particularly appreciate this other point that came up, you brought. You don't just defer your interests. It's part of the relationship that you have your interests. I mean, a really nice example of this, as we're sitting here discussing this topic, is Nityananda Pranhemangi and Prahlad. Their interests are very different. And, it's just fine. Nityananda Pran likes doing this. Prahlad likes doing that. Hemangi likes doing something else. And they're just fine. And look at their altar. It's exemplary of their moods, and it's just fine. And so it's very wholesome relationships. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens by cultivation of a good character and respecting. Maybe sometimes not getting it right, and then having to adjust and so forth. But the sincerity and purity carries the day. The younger generation people, I mean, everybody here knows, younger generation people are very tuned. It's just the way it is. Just the way it is. Even, very traditional, wholesome, very different. Very different. But when the relationship, the bond of love is there, then the parents aren't pushing, and the children are looking at their parents and saying, "Gosh, they're different, isn't it nice?" They're not thinking, "Gosh, they're different. I'm out of here." Others? Yeah. I thought so.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Firstly, thank you so much for the lecture. And I just want to say I felt very relieved when you said progress is about taking small steps, because I've been taking very small steps, and happy to know I'm making some progress. So, but my question is,
And there's no race. It's not like if someone crosses the finish line before you do, it's a win-lose situation. That's not it. Not it. There's no race.
thank you.
It's important. Because I've, some people, they go, "Shoo," and then where are they? So this is another, slow but steady wins the race. The hare and the tortoise story. So it's slow but steady wins the race. Prabhupada used the phrase. He didn't say hare and tortoise, but slow but steady wins the race. So this steady, slow, it's fine. Steady, that's important. Next. your question.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So for those of us who are not parents yet and will eventually become parents, what are some things that we can do or practice as a husband and wife, towards our spiritual goal, so that eventually when we become parents, we can set a good example in our household for our children?
That is the right time to ask this question is now, not later. Because the later think, gosh, if only before we became parents we had proper foundation. I was asked this question a little differently, but quite similar question recently, not so long ago. Can you put that down? And the context was different. It's just starting to come to into my mind. But the phrase came up, integrity. That is, be honest with yourself of who you are, where you are, and become very clear, at least, in a, not just euphoric sense of love of God or something, or go back to Godhead or something, but something that's a meaningful objective for you to strive for, and then with sincerity work towards it. As the whole of the bhakti process requires control of the mind and senses. So in a person of integrity is when they say something, they do that something. It's small, but it's big. You say to yourself, or you say to your husband, "This is important to me. It's a goal worthy of me striving for, and I want to work on it." And it's whatever it is, the relationship between husband and wife, because those little things, those little victories, strengthen integrity. Your sense of, I mean it, and I'm committed to it, and I'm going to, live by it. Another besides integrity, another word is truthful. Truthful to yourself, and truthful to your word, and truthful to your relationships with others. Then you're ready to take responsibility for others that are going to be very different than you. And it, of course, in different stages of development and so forth, and trying to understand what it is that this other entity wants and needs and feels, but so that there's some integrity within yourself, for starters, because otherwise what are you going to give? Good intention, likely. But then, of what substance? So you just ratchet up a bunch, and the substance is my relationship with Krishna. So that those integrity steps be towards that goal, not just the worldly sense. Mine is Krishna, the worldly sense, but towards bringing integrity in my relationship with Krishna, my spiritual mission, this life's mission. So then it comes back to control of the mind and senses and living by what I hold to be standards I want to live by. And then the next step of those standards I want to live by. You know, it's starting within yourself, and then the husband-wife relationship, and then your close friends. Then, you know, as you make some increments of progress in that direction, you're more ready to be a parent. Because here comes another one that's like, what do they want and what do they need and who are they? And how about our host? And you want to? No. Okay. Well, this was your topic. I'm poking you. I'm poking you again. Okay, you got what you wanted. Okay. 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 Back here, we have one over here.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. He's going to turn you on. Don't worry. Keep speaking.
Okay.
So he can adjust the volume.
Yeah. I have a question about listening skills, or
About?
maybe listening
Listening.
and teaching for my son. Yeah.
Ooh.
In the parenting, like
Yeah.
comes to parent.
Okay.
So, like, maybe I can take some guidance from you on that. Like, I see some of the parents teach the kid like things that already teach in the school. Like, if you say, for example, alphabets, right? Son of my age, I see some parents teaching them alphabets, writing even before they go to the school. But my thought process is, I want my son to be able to concentrate in the school, learn that in the school, so that when he, like, throughout his like education, he learns how to listen in the school, get the best out of the school. Then I tell him even before he goes to the school, so he loses that interest in the school. Like, I always have that thought process that he should be able to concentrate in the school and get the best out of the school. Then I teach him before he goes to the school. That's just one example. Like, am I thinking the right way? Like, for example, solar system. I see my...
I'm not a PhD in education, but intuitively, my response would be, depending upon the aptitude of a child, give them resources according to their aptitude. And if they already know before they enter school, then it just, they'll just be able to do it better once they get to school. But you're nourishing whatever their aptitude is, whatever that is. There's academic, there's social. So you say some parents, they like to sing, and they're singing and singing and singing, and so their child is going to want to learn to sing. So you do different things, seeing what your son has an interest in, and give resources, ahead of time or whenever. Not force, but it's just like the coins and the book, just put different things out there and see what there's interest, and then you nourish that interest. It doesn't matter what school is going to offer or not offer, and you make decisions based on that. their interest. Lots of parents these days, more parents than before, are interested in homeschooling. And it's not what they learn in school, it's what the interest of the child is.
So my worry is, if I tell him how the solar system looks like, even before he goes to school, he won't focus in the school. So I feel like
I understand the question. Now I understand better what you're asking, but it depends on the sharpness of his intellect. He may then be able to take that tool that he already knows and not be distracted and bored, but use that tool in a way that his intellect permits him. So don't predict. Just see the interests and nourish, give resources for the interest. And they'll find out a way, if they're intelligent, sufficiently intelligent, how to use that skill and keep moving. And then you as a father can provide additional something or others in those earlier stages of schooling that keeps his interest and appetite for learning strong. Don't hold back. Let interest be nourished. It becomes particularly possible when there's the involvement, parent to child. What we have to do every day in our life. Well, what do you like to do? You like to eat. You like to play, right? There's bodily necessities. That's those things we have to do every day. You have to sleep. You have to eat. You have to take a bath. Be clean. There's certain things you have to do every day. Put on fresh clothes. Certain things like that for the body. And then, just like we're discussing here, something that's for the mind. Just like your question, fantastic question, that's for the mind. And then, let's go a little deeper because you're a devotee. So you know that there's something more than that. There's more than the body and the mind, there's the soul. That's a need too. So do something that's for the soul. That's something that you should do every day. And do it with that purpose in mind, just like when you take a bath, you're making the body clean. The yucky stuff on the outside of the body, you're taking the yucky stuff off and making it clean. So make the inside also. That's a need. That's something we need to do every day. Something. Kirtan. Hearing, seeing pictures of Krishna, telling stories about Krishna. That's what you do for the soul inside every day. Okay? Hare Krishna. You have something now? Oh. Okay, I think that's it. That's it? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.